Welcome to this session on maximizing the potential of digital channels. My name is Martin Hill-Wilson, and I'd like to introduce my guests, Martijn Fransen from KPN and Chris Patton from Charles Schwab. Good day to you both.
Thank you. Good day.
Let's start with some quick introductions so that we can get to know our guests a little bit better. Martijn, if you'd like to start first, tell us a little bit about your current role and what you've been focused on over the last year.
Yeah, hi Martin. Yeah, happy to do so. So I'm Martijn Fransen. I'm indeed working within KPN as the Director of Digital Customer Service and Development. And what I've been doing over the last 5 years, let me say it like that, is doing the digital transformation within the customer service. So trying to understand the intent of the customer and trying to maximize value out of it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Chris, what have you been focused on?
Yeah, hey Martin, good morning. So I lead our cross-channel collaboration efforts within Charles Schwab. So we've been focused on really connecting our clients and our prospective clients to our digital channels through our live chat and our secure messaging platforms.
Fantastic. Okay. So this is a conversation on really trying to understand digital in the context of customer interaction and what those challenges are. So I'd like to have a conversation first of all about the end state, where you see you're trying to get to there. So number one, what's the vision that you've got for the digital channels? And also, how do you see that fitting into the slightly broader context of omni-channel strategy? And I know there's no such thing as a standard one of those. So how have you adapted that to the particular needs that you've got in your own organization? So again, Martijn, if you'd like to give us a view on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so for me, I don't know whether it's an end state, but my goal is to maximize the customer value, so to maximize the return on investment, and that is asking a lot of understanding the customer and trying to do the thing that is most valuable for him or her.
What channels have you got sort of operational at this particular point in time, and how do they fit into a broader perspective of communicating with customers?
Yeah, so one of the main channels is still voice within the customer service. As of the beginning of this year, I included also the website and the app within my responsibility. So that's also, I think, a main channel, no surprise. So it's the website, it is voice, and it's for to a large extent the KPN app. Yes.
Okay. Did I remember correctly when we last talked that you also had some community in there as well?
Yeah, with the community, we have messaging channels. We have, of course, live chat. But if you talk about the main channels, these are the three. But then it's the community indeed, and the messaging, live chat, email is another touchpoint channel, which we still use, but far less than before.
And as far as the voice, which I think is still very dominant, sort of best guess, how do you see that balancing out as digital adoption, develops?
Well, I think 2-3 years ago, we started to focus on the voice channel to digitalize it. So what we consider the voice channel not to be just a traditional channel, but somewhere where we can digitalize a lot. And what we've been doing is especially there to see whether we can understand the intent of the customer and try to make smart decisions, whether we can transfer the customer to an online environment.
Okay.
Or just make sure that we can optimize the routing of the customer.
Seen much difference over the last 12 months with the pandemic? Has that shifted the dial?
Well, in terms of typical questions, yes. So the connection is quite important, and if you're working from home or your whole family is at home, then you do experience the quality of the connection. So we have a lot of additional volume. But working from home was something we were already used to within KPN. So it's mainly the mix of the questions which shifted.
Chris, how's it looking as far as you're concerned? And in the context of financial services, what's dominant and what's the sort of direction of travel there?
Yeah, phone, to Martijn's point, phone is still our dominant channel. Really our goal though is to meet our customers or our clients rather in the channel of their choice. And more we see them moving toward digital channels. toward, avoiding being on the phone, somewhere where they can interact with us in that real-time space. So our live chat channels have seen tremendous growth over the last 2 years that I've been at Schwab specifically. Certainly the pandemic has affected the way people deal with their financial services relationships. We really love having our clients come in branch and in location to have that personal connection with their financial consultant, their branch consultants. That's not a thing, obviously, with COVID-19. So we've seen a dramatic uptick since December of 2019 in those digital channels. So currently we have live chat available on all of our digital properties, on all of our .coms, and then we've got our chatbot, the Schwab Assistant, really more of a concierge service on our retail mobile app. We're in the process of integrating that forward into our website channels. That'll come out probably later this year, and then also into our IVR. So it's been a nice melding of those channels. We're looking for opportunities to meet our customers where they want to be. We're looking at Apple Business Chat and some of the other channels as well. Really, to your first part of your question, the goal is to be able to have that omni-channel solution that lets clients change how they interact with us as it best suits them, but without losing the context for our reps and without losing the value that it brings to the clients.
Got it. And eventually, is that virtual assistant going to be basically the first point of contact for a customer, triage and help hand off to the preferred channel?
Yes, 100%. So the goal is to let customers self-serve in a way that there's no waiting time. There's no waiting for that next rep to come available. But at the same time, letting those clients who prefer to speak to a live rep, we call it pulling the ripcord, right? Pull that ripcord, get to the live rep, but leveraging all of the information about them and the conversations they've had with us to date to get them to the right rep the first time. So avoiding transfers as much as possible. What we found is, as clients have waited for an extended period, whether it be on the phone or on a chat line, they get a hold of somebody and then they want to solve all their problems, right? So there's multiple transfers that happen kind of along the way. The goal with the virtual assistant, the Schwab Assistant, is really to let them self-serve for some of the more navigational, frequently asked questions kind of tasks that they need. But when it comes time to place that complicated trade, to add a beneficiary to their account, the things that are a little bit more tangible, need some more help, let them get to that live rep as quickly as they can and get the service that they need.
And I would imagine also that you're very keen to make sure that context and background get seamlessly transferred so we don't start the conversation again. Exactly.
Yeah. So we pass that context along to the reps when they do get transferred to a live rep. The rep has the opportunity to review it. We give them a number of tools to review the client's information as much as possible. So how long they've been with Schwab, kind of what does their profile look like? And as we mature our services in this area, we would bring those things into the virtual agent, the Schwab Assistant, as well, so that the assistant can be fully informed, can personalize that experience to that client as much as possible. Yes.
Okay. Now, I'd like to tackle a topic and get your views on this. If you look at channel choice, it's only multiplying. I like to put it very simply. There's 3 modalities: voice, text, video. We'll leave telepathy out for a while, although that's in the background. But text particularly has got all sorts of different flavors to it. Voice has as well, with particularly digital voice. Video has become incredibly popular, as we're giving testament to right now. Everyone's got over that. I never had such a thing as a bad hair day, but some people do. But we're definitely doing video now. Increasingly for some spaces, it's particularly powerful, particularly when it's emotive. And it's nice. I think e-commerce has experimented with it. And then, of course, the devices that we can use. We're talking to all sorts of things in our lives these days, and IoT is a big space that's beginning to open up. So the choice is absolutely enormous, and you could probably spend your budget twice over if you decided to buy everything in the sweetie shop. So I think there's a really interesting question here, which is that if it needs to be choice, which clearly there does, to cater to different use cases, different preferences that customers have, how do you go about deciding what's in and what's out? Because otherwise we're just on a basis of potentially adding more complexity. So, you might not have necessarily encountered this as a real live problem, but I think as a discussion point for people and guidance, it'd be very valuable to get your perspective. So Martijn, what kind of would drive you in terms of a set of principles around of, what's the optimum mix? How do you decide that? What's in and what's out, and what's driving your decisions around of that?
Well, I think that's a very difficult question to answer. But what we are doing, I can tell you, that is that we have a digital first strategy, of course, and we are aiming for our app, our mobile app. I think the thing we should do is recognize immediately whenever that's not good enough yet. So using Genesis Cloud in a couple of weeks, hopefully, we try to recognize that and make sure that we have a seamless customer journey from the web of the app into the call center. And on the second place, I think it's important to then understand what the customer preference is and make sure that you have the flexibility to adapt. But at the moment, I think still the volumes are on the web and within the call center. And how can we make that a smooth journey?
I think that's massively important. I think that's a great answer, actually. Pick the points of activity that the customer is involved in right now. And I think moving from web into contact center can still be hugely frustrating, and there's some significant ones. I mean, for example, social, grown a lot over the pandemic. I've always been very keen on social customer service. And yet there are definitely things, particularly in a financial context, where you just can't, direct message them or you can't answer them in that context. And you hear people say, I'm sorry, but can you phone the call center? And there's a terrible sinking feeling then from the customer of starting back at zero again. So it's these points that matter, probably the transfer between those channels rather than necessarily the number of channels at the end of the day. So I think that's an important thing. Chris, I know you've done some work on messaging, haven't you?
Yeah, so we're looking at Apple Business Chat as our next major channel rollout later this year, early next year. The opportunity to reduce the number of calls to the call center and therefore reduce the hold time, reduce that lag, that you were just speaking of, is huge. And the opportunity to do that via Apple Business Chat or an SMS, it's really important. So we see potential volumes in the 50 to 75,000 conversations per month with our clients. Some of it being incremental, but the vast majority being deflection. It requires not just the technology piece, but also the operational aspect to stand up those reps who are now dealing with, that a new mode of communication where it's not, back and forth for 30, 45 second, tete-a-tetes, if you will. But really more of multiple people managing a longer conversation, all maintaining brand, all maintaining voice. So it requires a different skill set, but we're really looking forward to it and the opportunities it'll bring for our clients to engage with us in new ways.
And within that choice and the obvious benefits that asynchronous brings, are you tempted to try to, again, sort of fill in everything in terms of that? So it could be messaging, it could be Apple, it could be RCS, it could be, if you're in a different part of the world, it could be Line, it could be Telegram, goodness knows what. Or do you say, no, enough is enough, I'm just going to take one or two of those? Yeah,
we have to place our bets carefully. So to Martijn's point, we're looking where our clients are today and where our prospective clients are going tomorrow. So Apple Business Chat is sort of a no-brainer in a lot of ways. Obviously, web chat we do today, and we've got our retail mobile app. As we look at, and we've looked at, honestly, our learnings from our TD Ameritrade associates that are onboarding with us, this over the last year, we're looking to learn from them as well. What's worked? Where have things been a valuable bet? Can we place automation into channels where there's lower volume, but also maybe lower need for authentication, for sharing personal information, for that authenticated experience. And then divert them toward an authenticated channel where it's a better interaction for the client. So if you start on Twitter asking a question, I tell this story, I've told this story probably 3 times already this week. It dates me a little bit, but back in 2007, 2008, I was buying my first iMac and I wasn't sure whether or not to buy a 21 or a 24 inch, and price point was not insignificant. And so I kind of put it out there to my newly found Twitterverse, and Apple wrote me back, right, with a response of, here's why the 24 inch is better, resolution, longevity, processor speed, all these things. And I was, my heart stopped for a minute. Like, here's this massive brand communicating with this lonely guy in New York City. And it was kind of a watershed moment for me. So if I take that forward 13 years to, if somebody reaches out to Charles Schwab for, I'm trying to understand how to better plan for my future, are there opportunities for us to have that conversation? Absolutely. Are they the kinds of conversations that would be better served potentially in a different channel? Probably. So how do we start it there, bring them into a more comfortable, more rich channel, where we can have a more realistic and more fruitful conversation about their financial health.
That reminds me, actually, interesting thing, reaching out to people in the place that they choose to be or sometimes find themselves. Have either of you thought about reaching out when people are leaving comments? Trustpilot, for example, being one. And I'm talking last week to somebody who's done some interesting work on, enabling that channel and being able to pull them in more easily. Are you, in that sense of social customer service, willing to sort of go out to wherever the customer is, make contact, give that kind of Apple experience of, wow, I'm hearing you, I'm responding to you, and then try and sort of almost drag them in slowly into a secure or a well-designed channel of choice that you've already got? Is that on the radar yet, or is that a little bit too far out?
Well, it's quite normal. We try to respond on the comments of the customer. So regardless whether it's on the community or out there on the web, but also of course the customer feedback that we receive. So that's quite common.
Things like Trustpilot and some other places have really grown in terms of, we've been encouraged, I think particularly through Voice of Customer, to comment and to do that. And I guess that's often a place where questions initially get asked. And I certainly know social customer service teams are well versed at listening out to that kind of stuff. Maybe it's more easy for you, because I think owning a community is an interesting experience as well, which is a sort of a balance of ownership, isn't it, between customers and also the brand. And it's a great place where you can hear all sorts of stuff coming through. Have you got anything equivalent, Chris, interestingly, around sort of community as such?
Yeah, so we definitely have listeners out there in space to, pick up sort of that that vibe, akin to my Twitter story. And then those folks are doing that reach out. We also do, we have capabilities around proactive chat. So if a client or prospective client, an unauthenticated client or unauthenticated user is on our website, and we're seeing them behave in specific manners, we can, through the Genesis platform, reach out to them in a proactive manner to offer them content, to offer them the opportunity to chat, to offer them an opportunity to come to the branch if that's something that's better for them, whatever that case might be. We've looked at things like chat rooms. I know our TD Ameritrade brethren have chat room capabilities where it's an unmoderated space where clients can gather and sort of share ideas and share notions. We're examining that for potential future as well. I think there's a lot of opportunities, even as things potentially shift back toward quote unquote normal or what maybe was pre-pandemic states. There are a lot of opportunities where people are going to feel more comfortable in a digital space in that collaborative area. So we're looking at ways for that to be something that people can opt into, where we can participate, but not necessarily be a heavy hand in it. And then to your point, Martin, bring folks out of those conversations and into more of a one-on-one dialogue with financial consultants who can best serve the clients.
So let's talk about foundations. I mean, I think the pandemic has definitely got a lot of people on both the customer side and the brand side oriented to a digital first way of engaging. I mean, that seems to be pretty common, and it's moved fairly fast. We've both acknowledged that voice is still fairly dominant. We're growing different ways of communicating. And I have heard, certainly it might just be a UK perspective, but still there is some irritation with organizations not getting, these new forms of communication working as well as is expected. So what's the conversation around of getting it right? It's one thing to buy a channel, invest in it, get excited, but what are the things that really drives it? You know, is it to do with how it's integrated? Is it to do with how it's been trialed and piloted? Is it to do with, you know, its ability to deliver first-time resolution? You know, what are the foundations that you look at before saying, I don't want to switch this on yet because I don't know that it's going to give a good customer experience? Martijn, what's your kind of checklist on that you insist on in order to get a success around of a new channel?
Well, I absolutely agree with the term integration to make sure that are not standalone touch points that we offer the customer or channels. We've, I think, often had a big challenge of combining all the data and then understand what the real need of the customer is. I think how I like to call them is to invest in 4 enablers, and those enablers are the customer recognition. So you need to recognize your customer in each of the touch points that you offer. And if you then recognize, you should actually have all the necessary data, the contextual data in order to make the best next step. And so you have the smart decisioning, and without the recognition and the data, you can't be personal, you can't be relevant, you can't be proactive. You have a lot of losses. And then at the end, I think it's a question of, and we touched upon that earlier, to make sure that you have your digital tooling, the ease of use in each of the touch points. And if you don't have it, you should, I think, really think twice before you start offering a touch point or a channel like that. But to get back on your question, those 4 enablers are really crucial, and I like to have my focus on those 4.
And is it possible, do you think, to apply the same process of identifying a customer and therefore authenticating them across any of the channels, or do you find that you have to do that on a bespoke basis?
Well, so far we haven't been successful. So it is, I think it's still looking for what is the right overall identifier. I don't know whether that will be the case for the next 2-3 years to come. I think on the one hand, you can start influencing it by really ensuring that's a lot of trust for the customer to start in the mobile app or on the web, where we can then identify you. We have a KPN ID before you eventually transfer to the right customer service agent.
Yep.
So that's maybe a little bit of a workaround. But we don't yet have, maybe it's something to do with the biometrics where the future probably is. But so far it's really tried to combine the different identifiers. And also here we hope a lot, or we think we can, the implementation of Genesis Cloud and Adobe will help us, making that more easy.
It's actually one potential source of that, of course, is the mobile device itself. And so, you know, as being in the business that you're in as KPN, do you find, what's actually the split you find between laptop, desktop, or whatever it's going to be, and mobile device in terms of how people communicate? Do you have that data? Because I would assume that it will be weighted towards mobile engagement, or is that wrong?
No, that's true. That's true.
Okay.
So the majority is on a mobile device, and well, it's for a telco. It's also very easy when you take the voice touch point at the telephony platform, where you can immediately use the mobile device as an identifier. So the identification rate in that part of the company is quite high. It's between 85 and 90%.
Yeah.
But it's how do you deal with it on the website?
Yeah, I get that. I get that. How does it work, Chris, for you? The virtual assistant, what's it going to ask me in order to ID me?
Currently, our virtual assistant resides on our retail mobile app, which is an authenticated experience. So it does already have that level of trust. As we look to bring it into our web channels, we're starting with the authenticated experience. So you've already been authenticated through Schwab.com. We've got a secure connection to the Genesis Cloud. We've established that, you know, we've got your customer ID, we've got your account information. We know where you've been on the site, where you've excuse me, potentially started this conversation from. So we're making some inferences based on, based on all that information around what you might be asking and where you're headed. So so from that perspective, we're pretty locked in.
Mm. So clearly, in both of your examples, data and what we know about the customer in a digital context is absolutely one of those foundational things you've got to get right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question coming out of that, I guess, is where are you at in terms of, having the right data available in a real-time context? I think very few people would say it's perfect yet. It's a struggle. Organizations are defined by their functional silos, and that often is reflected in the data source. Are you close to nirvana on that point, or are you still in a huge point of transition? Because I've noticed a lot of people, when they're talking about progressing in digital, are also simultaneously progressing in a data strategy at the same time as well. Martijn, thoughts on that?
So yeah, we still have I think many miles to go. So if you take a standalone touch point like again voice, there are some really good examples where we already are having some traction, and so immediately getting the right data and making smart decision on that data, and we see huge impact in terms of conversion or in customer effort scores or in satisfaction scores. But if the perception is from an overall point of view, then we have many miles to go.
Chris, your thoughts on that in terms of progress and where you'd like it to get to?
Yeah, I think we've got a really great data set for our clients. The nuance there is picking those data elements that are the most relevant for the reps to be able to best serve, right? So I'm fortunate on my team to have folks who have actually spent years on the desk, taking chats, taking phone calls. They come with a real empathy for what the reps experience, right? And it's it's almost the dentist experience. Clients are not necessarily coming to you in the best mood. So what are the elements you can provide to the reps so that they can be calm, cool, collected, have a world of information at their fingertips, but not be overwhelmed and bring up points that maybe aren't salient. So I think there's always work to be done there. We have a data analytics and insights team that we partner with both on the live chat and on the virtual assistant side that are attenuated highly toward bringing that relevant data forward. We also do real-time language analytics to bring up trending topics throughout the day to the supervisor so that they can communicate that out to the desk. So it's not just the static data of, I'm customer 1, 2, 3, I have these types of accounts, I have this much money, I do these types of training activities, et cetera, et cetera. But really, what is the market talking about? When Robinhood blew up, a couple months back, that was a big thing that we needed to get in front of, because as people are asking those types of questions, we want to present a coherent answer to what is a very tumultuous topic that was really riling customers up in the financial services market. So it's those types of things that we look to leverage as we pull data out of our Genesis cloud into an ML type of machine learning type of environment where we can then push that information forward to the reps and present them with appropriate answers that for questions maybe that they haven't even gotten yet.
I think that's a really fascinating point. I'm not a big fan of the word digital, and I won't soapbox in it because I don't think it makes a great deal of sense. But when we talk about digitalization, it does make much more sense. And I think one of the characteristics you've just mentioned there is in that environment, customers, we all expect things to happen pretty much in the moment. And one of the great things about digitalization is that you can bring things into a real-time context. And interestingly, the generation that we're moving into now is all about being able to read what's taking place and respond to that. And I've just actually been doing some really interesting work on interaction analytics for that very same reason, in fact. The ability to be responsive almost in the moment. That word cloud over Robinhood must have exploded on the day, and being able to actually see what's going on and be sufficiently responsive at scale, is the thing to be able to do. So digital channels is also not just really a question of talking about web chat and messaging. I think it's also a whole behavior, isn't it? It's a whole way in which you can deliver service, and it's got to be able to be curiously both very personal, but also very scalable and very much in the moment. I suppose if one thing that we want to escape is the idea that you go offline, which basically means it takes ages. And I think, I don't know if you were around when it happened, Chris, but there must have been a point where Charles Schwab was half into offline and half into digital. You know, in other words, there was still something in the post that was being sent to sign before you could get on with life. And that completely kneecaps the experience, doesn't it?
Yeah, we still have that, right? There are certain forms that still require, right, as we move toward a more digital focus and are digitizing our forms and our collaboration space online. There are still things, for better or worse, that need a physical signature on them. So we do still have a package fulfillment center that, you know, mails out these types of things, and there are certain things that we need you as a client to potentially bring into branch. But that's, you know, we see that as something of a necessary evil for the moment, but something that we would ideally move toward that digitization of. And Martin, to your question and some of our earlier conversations, you know, it's interesting to think about digital channels, but we don't include phones in digital channels, right?
Yeah.
But phones are a digital channel in the real sense of the word, right? Like VoIP is a real thing. So the things that we bring to our live chat reps and to the folks who might be dealing with clients on Apple Business Chat or other channels like that, we want to bring those same experiences to our phone reps, right? Because it's completely salient and completely relevant to have all that context, right, on the phone. That's the most, outside of meeting face to face or maybe video links, it's the most personal we can be with our clients in that realm. So it's we definitely still deal with the physical. We definitely have instances where even our live reps will say, hey, I'm sorry, to do this, you have to call, right? You have to come into branch. But as we move forward in our maturation of our digital platforms, we're looking forward to, you know, bringing those things, those opportunities to a minimum from a physical perspective and making them more digital.
So just circling back, you know, the foundations, I think you said that really well. It's not just adding an extra channel. It's also trying to bring data, workflow, and interaction all into the same space, a digital context, you know, so that you can do everything in that kind of seamless way that we were talking about, at scale, personalized, et cetera, et cetera. Time has marched on, actually, gentlemen. So we're getting towards the end of our session. I think as is time tradition, let's just leave our audience with some tips. And thinking about, you know, making a new channel work. We've got to onboard it. We've got to make it work. We've got to scale it. We've talked actually quite a lot implicitly about technology, but if I could just nudge you towards maybe some comments about culture and people. In terms of making a success on this, is there anything that we've got to do to really help adoption internally, either with customers as well, that will determine the success of a new channel? Martin, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important to also to stipulate what the digitalization can do for you as an employee. And I'd like to give an example where we use speech to text and a digital coach to provide the agent with almost real-time insights, how they can invest in their own development. I think it's quite important to show what the added value is for the rep as well. So that helps, and it's not only seen as a threat where volume will be less, because I doubt it actually, because I think there will be at the same time quite a challenge to make sure that we don't lose the real contact with the customer, and in a world which will become more and more complex.
Would you extend that orientation to customers as well? I mean, we often build these things and forget to actually tell customers that they exist and get rather disappointed as a result.
and we try to do it as follow is that you should also have the trust of the customer. So digitalization is not something which you will realize overnight. We will make a lot of mistakes, and when you have the trust that if things don't work out well, you will be immediately transferred to an agent, then the customer can rely on something, and then you can gradually start to become better and better and more digital, 100% digital company at the end, perhaps. But that's something we try to invest in to make sure that there's a lot of trust to do together.
Yes, I think that's well said. And that's really the confidence from the customer's perspective that digital isn't another barrier that I have to get over in order to get the job done, which can sometimes be a suspicion. Chris, just give you the chance to last comment on that. What do you think is important to focus on?
To Martine's point, we really do think about our reps. As we roll out new experiences for our clients, we look at a couple top line results. One is the client's survey information, so overall satisfaction, but then we're looking at rep satisfaction as well. And then we have a metric that we leverage to calculate one around client easy score. So how do we ensure that we're greasing the skids, if you will, for clients to service themselves in a way that works for them. So we're looking at those metrics coupled with sort of the traditional call center, contact center metrics around like handle time, speed to answer, abandonment rates, service levels, et cetera. And we're looking at that through the lens of where do we pivot, where do we go? Our workforce management teams do that from a rep perspective. They have that very difficult job of trying to service the clients by putting reps in the right spot, but also helping the reps find diversity in their day.
Yeah.
Right? If you're on a phone for 15 hours or 10 hours or 6 hours or 2 hours, is that sufficient? Are you being fulfilled? Are you growing as a customer service person? So it's a really nuanced balance, but we're looking at as many of the metrics as we can to ensure that we're investing appropriately. We're in a fortunate position that we do have a strong relationship with our clients. We really do want to put forward, and I think we've proven over the last 50 years that we are a customer first, a client first organization. Charles Schwab's quote, right, is, if you put the customer first, I'm not going to get this perfect, but if you put the customer first, then you're probably doing the right thing. And so that's our mentality with all these aspects. So you won't find us in WhatsApp or on TikTok or Snapchat necessarily, but you'll find us in those spots where our clients are and where they feel best centered for that reliable conversation with us.
Fantastic. So I think in summary, experience management is another key important point. That includes customer, that includes everyone who works with us and for us. And they're one and the same in terms of our objectives there. Listen, we've got to the end of our conversation. Martijn, Chris, thank you both very much for contributing to the conversation, for wisdom and insight. And I'm sure that we've learned lots as a result of that. So thank you both very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.